Quick question for you. So, when's the last time you renovated a basement and turned it into a creative space of your own? The only ties we have to a basement over here at Down the Business is that we recorded our introductory episode in one. Other than that, I don't even currently have a basement of my own, but for Richard, this became a reality in 2016. And then in 2024, he went all in and really became a full time talk show host, something that he was aspiring to do as a child. And so since then, he's really been able to connect with a lot of people virtually, in person, and really be able to tell their stories, allow them to celebrate themselves, their accomplishments, all while getting it is what they do out there to the public and to the masses. Almost similar to what we do here at Down the Business. And if you watch the episode, you'll see how much we resonated. You'll see how much he inspired me, and you'll see just how far he is willing to go to make sure that your story is heard. So without further ado, enjoy episode 205, Basement Artist. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Down to Business podcast here with Tamar Turner. If you can't tell from Richard's background, I think we're going to have quite the conversation today. I was very excited to connect with him on Facebook. It was actually in the process of him sending me over a recommendation, another client who actually will be coming on the podcast at a later date. But in the conversation, he started to tell me a little bit about what he does and what he has going on. And we connected from there, and then the rest was history. So very excited that we are now finally making this actually happen. I'm putting the face to the name. He even actually educated me on some things before we even started the interview. So I know this conversation is going to be just that much to look forward to. So before we get into all things that Richard does, before he tells you guys everything and you guys start to tap in and follow his journey, Richard, how you doing today? How's everything on your end?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm pretty good. No complaints. It's a Monday here, but it was not a Monday, so I cannot.
Yeah, it's good.
So I know we're going to have some people from your side. I know we're going to have some people from my side, and then we're going to have some newcomers along the way. So to bring everybody up to speed, to put everybody on one level and even playing field, can you just do two things for me? Can you, one,
Sure.
tell us a little bit about yourself, and then two, just tell us what brings you on the Down to Business podcast today?
Oh gosh, a little bit about myself. Like every 10-year-old boy, I wanted to be a talk show host, and finally got to do that in 2016. I created my own talk show. I renovated a basement in a house, and I would have live bands, audience members, and I really just wanted to connect with people and hear people's stories. And that has snowballed into a business that I do full time now as of 2024. I left my full-time job that I had to concentrate on this and helping people connect with each other, and it has been amazing. And why I'm on here, I get nervous when people invite me on podcasts that aren't about podcasting and are about like business and because I'm like, I don't know if I know any answers, but I know what not to do. But I guess maybe I know some things to do. So we'll see what happens in the next 20 minutes or whatever, however long we're here.
And I'm sure even in your answers, even in what you've done and what you shouldn't do and what you have done, I'm sure that you'll be a resource. You'll be a light for somebody out there, maybe not to make some of the same mistakes that you made. Because even in the beginning of what you said, very interested in that. So you pretty much made your own talk show from scratch. Oftentimes I feel like when we hear about the talk shows, yes, these are people who it becomes their brand or it becomes their first and last name show or something like that. But a lot of times it's a lot of moving parts and it's a lot of pieces that 9 times out of 10, they just have to bring themselves and what they do in their element. They're not renovating different things. They have a studio set up and everything like that. So now to get to yours, to get to the beginning of everything, you made as soon as you said that line, I said, wow, this is going to be cool. So with that, was there ever in the beginning, a notion, or did you feel like you kind of just took on a little bit, maybe more that you could handle? Did you have just a little bit too much on your plate? Was there a lot and I could imagine you probably could say yes to that, but in really doing this, as you started to renovate the basement, were there any points where you were just like, wow, this it's a lot more to this than maybe what meets the eye?
So it wasn't that part, because like set design, the creative part was like a no-brainer for me. It was the technical side. Like I literally never thought about editing, lighting, microphone. I never had any of that stuff. I had a great set and no lights and an iPad. And I filmed my first episode and I had footage, and it never dawned on me that I would have to do something with it. Like that is literally how like laser focused I was on hosting a show. And so then I Googled like free editing software because I'd never edited a video in my life, and found the cheapest one I could find. and bought it. Taught myself how to use it, and I still use it to this day to edit all my stuff. Um, and then have slowly over the last however many years it is, 2016 to now, uh, hopefully improved things along the way. But yeah, that like, and then I thought, oh, what am I doing here? Like, I never thought, like, where do I put it? That was like, I don't know. Nobody else was really doing it in my world in 2016. Like, I know they were out there, but I just thought I want to host a show and I want to talk to people. And then I realized there's more to that. Like, this is why TV shows and movies have crews of hundreds and thousands, because there's a lot that goes into it if you want to do it well.
I'm telling you, oftentimes I used to, for certain movies that you have to sit through at the end just to get to those extra scenes or those ending credits and everything, to see how many people were sometimes involved in something. It's just like, wow, but what? And sometimes some of the things that they're getting credit for, it's just like, I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what that meant in reference to this film. But you literally need every moving piece, every name on there needs it. So, but it wasn't, like you said, a similar sentiment of mine. Like, it wasn't until I really started to get in the thick of things that I realized how much really was this. I guess kind of have a little bit of a different approach to it because, that's what I went to school for, like editing, videography, photography, and everything like that. So for me, that kind of just, as much as I dislike it, it kind of just still just came like that to me. But it was that piece of now, like, distribution. Okay, I'm being told that I can put this on this one website and I need an RSS feed and I need to copy this link from over here and put it here. And I was on the phone with Apple Podcast support because I had no idea what I was doing, and Anchor was really helping me out. And I was just like, wow, I did not realize that it went into all this. One, I didn't even realize that there were so many different places that you could find podcasts, because like you said, you started 2016. Well, I was 3 years later and I would still take on the same sentiment that you had about, granted, there was a lot out there. There were a lot of, I'd be remiss to say there were just no podcasts out there. No, but within my network, within my circle, within my even age group, there was nothing for me to kind of resonate with or go off of. Or, a lot of people ask me, hey, well, who were you looking at when you got your start, or who did you? And I kind of tell them, look, one day I stayed after class in grad school. I picked my professor's brain who had a podcast on ESPN, but I went totally different from the sports route. So for me, it was just a totally different approach, but it was just like, wow, I really have nothing to kind of emulate. I know what I want to do. I know what I bring to the table, but it was hard to kind of get that ball rolling, I would say. So something you also kind of expressed, and I feel similarly, was just telling stories. And you wanted to kind of just be able to get that out there with people. Now, with that notion, was there something that kind of propelled that or like motivated that? Were you just surrounded by a lot of people? The reason why I asked that, and I'll put it into some context for myself. So the reason why I am so surprised by this podcast sometimes is because I was a big sports guy. You couldn't really, even some people kind of hear the nature of my podcast now and they're just like, did you just give up on the Sports Center or the ESPN? Because if you really knew me, you knew that my TV never left Sports Center. I would watch the same thing over and over again, just all the highlights, all the top 10s. I would act like it was my first time seeing it. But for me, being in grad school, doing all that, I said, there's no way I don't start a podcast around sports. Well, here we are hundreds of episodes later and nowhere near sports. So it's kind of cool. But the reason being was because I recognized that I just took a step back one day and I realized that I was surrounded by so many people who had so many stories to tell, who were in the midst of a pandemic coming into business, maybe going out of business, maybe kind of taking that leap of faith. And I said, I want to really tell this. So for you, was there something that kind of motivated that? Did you just know that you kind of wanted to do that? Did you just enjoy really sitting down, politicking with people and just being able to push that out there?
So I was a theater major in college, and then I realized very quickly that there was too much pressure for me to learn all that and to not screw it up for everybody else on stage, because if I screw it up, then everything kind of crumbles. And so I realized that I was much better at being myself. And so I've always been like in the art entertainment world, like I've been surrounded by it. And I realized that like there are so many people out there. I call them basement artists, mostly because I was the basement artist in my basement doing a TV show, that were like making great music, writing amazing books, making films, and had nowhere to talk about. And, like I always say, Tom Cruise can make the worst movie ever, but then go on every TV show and talk about it and make a gazillion dollars. And there are people putting their blood, sweat, and tears into these projects. And all they can do is like throw a flyer on their Facebook page to invite people to their show. And so I wanted to create a space where people could come and really celebrate themselves and their accomplishments and have something different to talk about what they've been working so hard on that maybe might catch someone's eye a little bit better than a graphic.
I absolutely love that. And I think too, a lot of the beginning stages of my podcast, and I say beginning now because I feel like I've talked to just such a plethora of individuals, people who are big scale, medium scale, small scale, everybody in their own respective right. But nonetheless, a story still to be told, brand awareness that still needs it. But I was big on just, those untolds or those what you wouldn't hear otherwise, or had I not maybe word of mouth or you've been reposted or like you said, coming across that Facebook flyer or something like that. When would I have ever discovered you? When would I have ever known about this? And this is arguably more entertaining than what I'm consuming or paying for or putting my all into. So it was just like I really wanted to tap into those untapped people and those untapped stories because, like you said, a lot of the times what's being put in front of us or what is out there already is because of the notoriety that said person has achieved already, or because of just their network or their net worth for that matter. But it's not to say that the basement artists, as we said, I love that term, as we said, are not doing just as much work, if not more. And if not a lot more to show for it. And, even a crazier background, because that's something I've learned about just talking to a lot of these people. These stories and these motivations behind things and what really propelled them into business sometimes is so interesting. You would have never thought that, to hear something like that, it turned you around and now you want to be able to give back and spread that light and that love to others. So we share a very similar sentiment in that regard. So, all right. So let's fast forward a little bit. So you have now completely renovated the basement now. It's set up. What was the next order of business after everything was to your liking, as far as like your set and the background and kind of everything being there? Did you start to like how I guess too, and I may even spoil it, not even really spoil it, but I may kind of tailor this question a little bit. What was the getting it out there like? What was that announcement like? Because I know for me, like with the podcast, I literally pulled my little brother down to my basement, gave him my iPhone. I said, give me a couple takes with this and let me just see where it goes. And I recorded my intro video announcing the podcast right in front of him. Messed up the first time, the second time we got it. And from there, I just dropped it on every social media site. And I said, don't second guess it. So for you, once you really got things renovated, setup wise, what was that next order of business to getting things out there?
That's something I was awful at because there was part of me that like was afraid of what's the reaction going to be. Like I worked so hard on it that one, I just like you put so much time in it that once it's out there, you think everybody's somehow already aware of it because you've put so much energy into it. And then you're like, I had 7 views in 3 months. Like, what happened? Like, and it took me a long time to figure out that you have to also promote myself because I always hid behind them like, this isn't about me. This is about the people, my guests. It's not about me. But I learned fairly quickly that it has to be a little bit about you, which is why I do shows, like to promote it. And that's like, that is still a learning process for me in like that being comfortable talking about me and only me. Like that always makes me feel uncomfortable. So that is, it took me a long time to not hide behind the it's not about me curtain. And I think I'm still kind of working through that. But I'm getting better because I've hosted too many shows now to not to not know the importance of it.
And once again, I think really, man, I wish we could have met each other probably earlier because we probably could have resonated in so many different ways that we didn't realize. As much as and for me, it really has nothing to do because I'm an extrovert, so it really has nothing to do with like shying away from it or anything like that. But like you said, the main mission behind this was to put the awareness out for others. But in order to do that, you have to, in some capacity,
People
put
have to be
yourself
aware of you. Yeah.
right. And so that was like the biggest disconnect for me too, because it was just like, look, I don't want to get on here. And if I just wanted to get on here and talk to me, I could do that without a podcast. We have so many social media, so everybody has an opinion. We can do that. But the fact that I really want to tell these stories accurately, truthfully, and transparently, it's hard to do that with also still putting me somewhere in that because I don't want to take away from said person. But in order for, let's just say sometimes said person doesn't promote the way that I may have anticipated or the way that it was expected, perhaps. I still have to promote that show. I still have to get down to business out there so that we can bring in more people too. So it was a hard slope, I would say, to navigate, really realize, what that balance is. And it's something that I still, as you said, there's always room for improvement. It's definitely not a struggle per se, but it's still something that you think about, still something that you're diligent about. So
The first like season of my show, I would watch. It wasn't live, and then I went to live because I was sick of watching myself. But I would watch every episode and pick one thing that I could do better for the next show. That was like my goal. Like just even if it was like move the microphone here or move it there, or like it could be the smallest thing, but I wanted to improve with every show.
I'm interested to know, how do you depict seasons within your show? Like, is there a set amount of episodes, set amount of topics? How do you decide that?
I go by my creativity level. Like this is such a creative job that I go until I feel tapped out and that I need to kind of go back a little bit and like experience life and miss it. And so when it becomes work, that's when I'm like, all right, time for a little break. And then a month later, I'll be like, okay, I missed that. Like my new show is literally because I got a rug for my house and it just like sparked something. It's not even in the studio. It's in a different room in the house. But the rug itself was like, oh, that's a fun rug. I need a new show. And that's why I have a new show.
I love that. And that's why I love talking to creatives too, because you never know what could be that spark, what could really put
Yeah.
you, because as you said, once things begin to feel like a chore, it's a drag. It's like, no, you gotta take that away, because as you're just depleting yourself, it's not, you can't even think the same. You can't even write the same. I've thought about times where I've had that writer's block, or I've just not been able to come up with something. I'm just like, well, let me take a look at my personal life. Let me step out of this for a second. 9 times out of 10, there was always something going on, always something bothering me, or I wasn't on my routine or something. So the creative journey, man, it's very indicative of who you are as a person. So you talked about the set a little bit. So now I want to kind of get into it, because I just keep staring at this background and I really love it. So a couple of questions now. So one, was that always the background? Did you kind of just add to this? I want to really know how this came together, because I love it. I'm blurred out back here, and I need to increase and enhance my creativity a little bit, but I'm loving this. It caught my eye as soon as I joined. So how did this all come together? Walk me through this.
So when I started like podcast, I didn't even know what a podcast was in 2016. That like never, and podcasts I think then were just audio, I think. And they've since, they're now like full-fledged TV shows, but I always wanted a TV show, a visual show that people could come and play music, play games. And so I wanted to create a fun environment that when you looked, you were like, well, first of all, what is going on in there? And two, I want to look around in there, where every time you watch, there's going to be something new that you see somewhere and that you want to come here and hang out. And the goal is to eventually have a place again where we have a studio audience so people can come and engage. Because I don't know, it's all about like that to me is fun, and I love color and I love like the surprise of that. Everyone is always like, what is going on back there? I'm not quite sure, but it's fun.
And I know we have people always tapping in from different places and different spaces, but I implore everyone, if you can get to YouTube or the visual link of this, please open it up. I love that y'all tap in from Apple and Spotify, but if y'all can watch this video for nothing more than the background, just watch it for that. He's giving me some motivation, but I like that. I love the uniqueness that comes with a podcast, that comes with a brand, that comes with just differentiating yourself in a sense, because like you said, the podcast world has undergone quite a transition, even from when we joined. So I could imagine, I talked to people who were in this for years, some people even 30 older than me, so it's always interesting to hear, what they were doing, what they were using, what sites, how they started, because I too started strictly audio. I was just all audio. It was very easy. It was simple. I would throw everything in Audacity, cut out some of the and it was cool. Episode 66, I then had an epiphany, and I was just like, I was tired of my friends badgering me about YouTube and telling me to get here and get this, and I just finally did it. So on the verge of epiphanies and just things like that, do you feel like along your journey, do you feel like for doing what you were doing, from how you started to how you began to continue to grow and then kind of move on to where you are today, would you say you kind of had like a aha moment, or would you say you kind of had a moment where your confidence was just like, this is it, like I have this, because people often ask me, hey, at what point did you really realize you were a podcaster? Like, this is what you're going to do. You're going to stick with this, because I always hear the stat about most podcasts don't make it past episode 3 or something like that. So it's always just interesting to hear that. And I always tell people, I would say my epiphany really came when I just started to start making seasons for my show. And I make every 10 episodes a season. And it was like one time, not that 10 was just a magical number at that point, but I was just like, hey, I'm feeling pretty comfortable about this. My first 10
Mhm.
episodes were all friends or family of some sort, so it was really cool. So for you, did you have really a moment or maybe even an episode or a show that really just hit the nail on the head for you?
I think there were like couple moments. One, like as it's grown, like when I went from during the pandemic, a corner of my bedroom that I was filming virtually into a studio, and then into a theater where I was filming in front of an audience. There are also moments where like people will reach out to me to be on, like it's when strangers come to me and go, can I be on your show? Or someone who has been on that was a stranger goes, can I come back on your show because that was fun? And those are like, okay, i I I know this is working and it's doing what I wanted it to do. I was just pre-recording some interviews over the weekend, and they brought, I don't know, a little club with them to watch the interview, and so I gave them all like branded mugs, and it was like, here, take those home, and they were like, oh, you're so professional, and I was like, oh yeah, yes, yes. When you're just like, it's tough when you're doing it yourself and you're trying to make it as best as possible, but you're also trying to stay within your limits and not. There are plenty of times where I'm doing something and I screw up a button on StreamYard and suddenly, and I'm like, oh, I've done too much, but you learn. Mistakes always happen.
Nah, I love that point too, because that was a big thing for me. I was just like, I started to get that imposter syndrome a bit, or the comparison
Mhm.
is the thief of joy
Mhm.
type mindset. And it was just like, I started to look at other podcasters and what they were doing from maybe a merchandise perspective or a branding perspective. And I was just like, wow, I noticed that what sometimes draws people in is just feeling that connection, or sometimes even that exclusivity, like thinking that they're a part of a particular community from a Patreon perspective or from a
Yeah.
subscriber perspective, or maybe even from a merchandise perspective. So I was always big on that, because I was like, I don't really know all the ins and outs of merchandise and clothes and shirts and things like that, but I know that I want to give my followers, my audience, something tangible to have. And I know that I want them to remember that. So a lot of too, what I started to do, I started to look at who I was talking to. And I started to
Mhm.
realize, oh, well, a lot of these brands I'm talking to, they're product-based brands. So okay, if I can start giving things away on behalf of this, but collaborating this way, one, it introduced me to another network, but two, it also gave my followers something to look forward to. Oh, Tamar loves giving away free stuff. If nothing more, I don't even want to listen to the episodes. I just want the free stuff.
I just want the free stuff.
I
Yes.
like it. Fine. It's because it's getting you here. So I'm not mad at
Yeah.
that. But yes, no, I definitely did at some points just try to realize, hey, how can I bridge that medium? How can I really figure out what'll keep people kind of coming back, and what'll also make it memorable? Because at the end of the day, I don't want to just give stuff away to give stuff away, but I want to give it away intentionally, whether it be for a
Mhm.
specific type of month, whether it be in memory of something, whether it be just to support this business and get it out there word of mouth too. So I like that a lot. Now, with your show, and like you said, you kind of spoke to the strangers part, because yeah, once I started to get those inquiries from people who I did not know, I was a little taken aback. One, well, how did you find me? Like, what is going on here? Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
did I click or send, or what did I do? But two, like, wow, there are people out there who, see what you do, maybe like the mission behind it, like your professionalism, like your attitude or anything, and they want to be a part of that journey. And some people just want to promote themselves. So they just kind of want
Yeah.
to be here and talk about it too. Now, with your show specifically, would you say there are specific criteria or guidelines that you have to follow when wanting to be a guest, when wanting to appear on it? Is it kind of just open to any and everyone? What does that look like for people who may even be listening and may be interested?
I think you have to have something to say. I don't know. I've gone through all of it. I've gone from begging my friends to come on at the beginning, to anybody who will sign up, because you go again, like with the imposter syndrome and the fear that no one's going to show up, so you just start saying yes to everyone, and then probably some people show up and you're like, oh, that was a mistake on my part. I've had shows that I've recorded and they've never gone out, and because they shouldn't go. It's embarrassing for me and it's embarrassing for the guest. So I do try to talk to everybody before they come on, just to make sure that they have the right vibe. We're not necessarily a show where you come on and you pitch your accounting business. There has to be some value for the general public, to come on the show, and you have to have a microphone and you have to have good lighting. Those are my prerequisites.
Okay, I left the microphone out today, y'all. I leave it out for most episodes, to be honest, y'all, because I just feel like I haven't gotten to my Richards yet. I'm not at the perfect like, I need to set this up. I need to do it.
We'll
So
talk after. We'll
that's
do a
something
session. Yeah, it'll be
we're
fun.
gonna work on some things like that. But okay, I like that. I love how you started. You have to have something to say. And oftentimes I
Mhm.
feel like that's a conversation. Like what are we talking about here? What is the basis of kind of what's going on or what's happening? But I love that. And I think too, it speaks to your creativity too, because I also know that just from listening to you and just from how you explain things, you're not gonna be doing shows, putting out seasons if you're not in it. So
Yeah.
we already know that going into it, if anybody's showing up, if anybody's going to be there, if anybody's going to meet you, where it's going to be Richard. It's all up to that guest, because I too have shows that have not made to see the light of day because they did not need to, or because, like you said, it's
Yep.
nothing like starting an episode and you read that email, you get that one page, or you get that pitch, and you're like, wow, this sounds amazing. Where was this person all my life? And then you guys sit across from each other virtually, and you're just like, this couldn't have been more awkward, even if you were sitting like right
Yeah.
next to me. Like, wow, this is
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah. So I understand.
I recently for this show booked someone who has a podcast. So I love creative people, entertainers, arts. Like if you have a podcast, come on the show. Like this is a community. I'm not like, we're not in competition. And he had a podcast and he joined virtually in the lobby of an office building next to the elevator with no microphone, no headphones. And I mean, what am I supposed to do with that? Like the noise and like, and so I talked to him, but it'll never go out because there's no reason to. And I feel bad, but like where this is a give and take. Like you're providing me with a guest, but I'm also providing you a platform to come talk about what you're out there doing. So yeah.
Because I think something that people don't necessarily put as much emphasis on is that this is your episode just as much as theirs. And I tell people that,
Yeah.
obviously I always tell people that, for as much as, because the people tell me, they're nervous or it's their first podcast or everything like that. And I get that, I've been there, done that. But I also want you to realize that this is what you make of it just the same. But
Mhm.
in that same breath, I also have to realize that they're a representation of me. If they kind of get on there and talk crazy or do something crazy, or it doesn't look right, or like you said, the professionalism is just lack thereof, then that's also, well, tomorrow why would you
Yeah.
put that out, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a podcaster who knows better, because I've been on so many shows where I've even taken notes from how they do things professionally, from how they set up, to the email, to the follow-up, to their team, to everything. And I've even implemented that in mine, because it's how you carry that. Everything is important when it comes to the podcast. I feel like the episode, the recording, that's the simple part, but it's
Yeah.
about the email communication, it's about the invite links, it's about the follow-up afterwards, it's about getting it out on time when you said you were, the editing, it's about the promotional material, then are you marketing it to people? So it's so many different things that come into it, but all people see is just me and you sitting across from each other right now.
Yeah, because it's not just your friends hanging out, and like if you want to level that up a little bit and invite strangers on and have people who don't know you come on, there has to be a level of professionalism on the host part and the guest part, I think.
As you start to think about where you want to be with your podcast, the growth, the monetization, the sponsorships, you have to think about, these companies are not going to look your way if they click that first episode and it just looks like a disaster, or if you put out something that you were on the fence about or that you personally wouldn't endorse. You have to look at things from the outside looking in. And I think sometimes it's hard because we are artists, we're creators, we're sensitive about our things, but we're not perfect. Everything
Yeah.
that even some of the top people have put out mediocre, have put out garbage, have put
Yeah,
out
you can have a bad show. Like my
okay.
show's live, so sometimes it's not great.
Right.
But you show up and you do 100%, and that's when it gets down to like 90%, maybe 80%. Then I'm like, all right, time for a break. You're not going to be perfect every day, but you at least have to try your best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I know that when we connected on Facebook as well, it was through you actually getting the word out for another client. So
Mhm.
what in that regard, obviously you have your own show, you do your own thing, you're your own brand and business as well. But speak to me a little bit about what you do to help others get booked and guest appear on podcasts. Is just the same.
Well, I think going on shows and going on podcasts and live streams is a really good marketing tool for people, for business owners, for whatever you are. There are like 4 or 5 million active podcasts right now. So no matter what you do or have to say, there's probably a place for you to go do that. And I realize that there are a lot of people who have really good things to say. So and they don't know this side of it. They don't even know that it exists. A lot of them that I talk to or bring up the idea of going on something, they're like, I never really thought of how podcasts get guests. I'm shocked that you can just kind of ask. And I'm like, well, not all of them, but some, and we can try it. So that's what I do. I help people find the right show for them to go on to promote whatever their expertise is, or themselves, their business. And it's been really fun to connect. Again, I love connection. So I love hearing about the guest, and then I get to find new podcasts to listen to, and then connecting them to make a really good episode.
And I'm telling you, I see a lot of that in that Facebook group. Just people out there with amazing stories, amazing testimonials, but may not necessarily know the means and the avenues to go. So it's true. I love when people like you kind of step in and almost pay it forward in a sense, or almost kind of help them or give them that boost, because oftentimes they're just missing that one piece. You get them involved. I've talked to some people where it's just like, wow, you're telling me this is like your first time, or you haven't been on this pod, you haven't heard of that, or they haven't told your story, you're not on the news, your CNN doesn't know about this, or like people are not like, nobody's covering this, it's just tomorrow. Okay, I'll take that, but it's just like, wow, oftentimes, that disconnect can be real, and it can be the difference between a global network feature and just kind of you staying local to market or anything. But oftentimes too, I still don't want people to look at that as shy away from that, because I think the local stories, and I think just being in your community and those people knowing about it are just as important as mainstream and main media, because I love those more intimate connections, those more intimate settings, because those are where your true fans and your true friend group lies and remains. So, all right, we've talked about things coming together. We've talked about kind of how you started. We've talked about the creative element and the creative process that you kind of put into things. I want to talk a little bit about moving forward. I want to talk about, I know that we're going to have some people now listening to this episode that may even reach out to you to be on the show, or may even reach out to you because they like the show. They tapped it into it. They love the background, similar to myself, or just in some capacity, this episode resonated with them in a way. So as we start to get those newcomers, those people who want to follow along with your journey now, what can people expect? Is there anything that, as we kind of move through the rest of this year, as we think about 2025 and what's to come, is there anything that you're looking at to debut from a show perspective, or just anything that you may be doing without spoiling anything, without revealing anything that hasn't come to light yet? But is there just anything that you're looking to do? Maybe like a new show concept, maybe a new guest appearance, maybe somebody you're really looking forward to bringing on?
I really want to move into a larger studio space and start having audiences again. And that's always that, like, live. I love virtual stuff, but having a guest sitting next to you talking, there's just something about it that is really why I started the show to begin with. And so I miss that a lot. But I do love the virtual element, because you get to meet so many more people that way. I also, at some point, part of my business plan is to open a studio for other people to come in and be able to create their own space like this. So we like not virtual backgrounds, like real set pieces that you can come and create a show. If you need a desk, if you need chairs, if you need whatever you need, like a theater prop shop kind of, and you get to create, because I think that's where people are really going to be able to tell their stories authentically, when they're able to create their own environments like that.
I feel like we may have been best friends in like a past life or something like that. Honestly, everything you said has just been like, wow, like Tamar, that's what you're trying. I think my biggest thing, I always tell people, like, no shame to any of my previous episodes, but any episode where I can sit right next to you, oh, you've probably gotten the best Tamar Turner of your life. You've probably gotten the best down to business, like start to finish. It's just the energy sometimes. It's just you feel it. Say that virtual, I give you everything I got, no matter the day, no matter the time, I'm going to do it. But it's something about that physical, something about those live events. It's something about even having people in front of you. Just being able to get that real time feedback, seeing that they laugh, seeing that, I said something corny on the virtual, nothing happened. I said something corny in real life, and everybody just, now I feel good about myself, and now we're going to keep this rolling and going. So I love to do that. But I also love too that you want to be a resource for people just the same, because I think that that's important. And I think oftentimes what What differentiates people or doesn't get people over that loop sometimes is just not having accessibility and not have, I even think about myself. Like if I didn't have this particular setup, what would I be doing? I've recorded in closets, I've recorded in garages, I've recorded on the go. I've done so many different things, that otherwise if I could just, because I even tell myself one of my biggest goals is just having a spot that I know I can go to when it's time to record, when it's time to edit. Heck, if I just need to get away, if I just need some space for myself. But the fact that you can do that for people who may not live in an area that's accessible to that, or, may not be able to, just from a monetary perspective, or may not even know where to get the money from. So I love that you're also just paying it forward and opening yourself to that. And I'm excited to see what's to come from that, because, even with, it's not until you give people that creative space that you really realize what they've had in them all this time. It's not until you give people a certain type of background, and you give them a blank room and you just allow them to make it their canvas, that you'll get their best self. And I think that that's so amazing to see. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of that. Now, before we close out, before we wrap things up, before we tell people all the places to find you, tap into the show, keep following along with everything that you're doing, do you feel like there's anything that we haven't touched on today that you want to leave the people with, whether it be any last words for business owners, entrepreneurs, creatives, podcasters, even anything, we've kind of talked about the futuristic perspective, but even anything that people can look forward to as we continue to follow along this journey?
I would say that I think every business should have a podcast, but I say that not saying that you as the owner necessarily need to be the host. Because sometimes hosts, and even like nonprofits should have, I worked in the nonprofit world for a long time. They should all have podcasts, but that does not mean that the founder should be the host. You have to find who has the personality, who has the time. Podcasting takes a lot of time and energy. And so like check your ego at the door and figure out who in your team should be hosting that podcast. So that would be my tip.
Oh, I love that. And I love how you prefaced it and how you ended it, because yes, you have to, I feel like podcasts are just a great way to promote people and just to get word out there, just to have conversations, just to talk. You can do it at your own leisure. You can listen to it whenever you want on the, I'm getting in cars with people now and we're listening to podcasts, and I'm just like, wow, like who would have ever thought, like I'm a music guru. So it's just like, there's never a time where you get in the car with me or that we're not listening to something. So now, I'm getting in there. You got the ebooks going, the podcast going. There's so much out there, and there's so many just creative ways to do it. You could have just the audio podcast. You have your YouTubers that you tap into, you subscribe to, and you get on there. You have some people that are just on certain networks, or you go to certain pages or their website, and they're doing everything. I've seen websites just geared towards podcasters, like just literally niche to a podcast, like the episode, everything like that. So it's so interesting just to see the direction that it's moving in, and even thinking about your 2016 journey, my 2019 journey, to now 8 and 5 years later to see where we're at. Well, I want to see another 8 and 5 years and see where that goes. And see what podcasts are doing, where they're at now, what new technology has been dispersed, and kind of how they're helping propel people. It's interesting to think about. Richard, man, it's like I said, I think it's almost as if you knew my questions, but you also knew my personal answers with a lot of these things, because like I said, a lot of what we talked about today, I just resonate with, and I resonate with from the perspective of just recognizing that coming into this journey, you didn't necessarily have a mentor, have somebody that you could just go step by step by and just follow kind of everything that they did, but you had a goal, you had a vision. Stay steadfast, you got the support that you needed, but you also just had that drive yourself, because even with all the support in the world, all the love or lack thereof, you still have to get up every day and show up for you. When you can't show up, you're not going to fake the funk, you're not going to do anything. You're going to give your creative process the time that it needs to reset and readjust. And I love that. So now, for everybody out there, arguably the most important part of the interview, the call to action. This is where we tell people to put the money where their mouth is. If you really enjoyed this today, or if if you're serious maybe about podcasting, or you've been on the fence about starting your podcast, or you have a nonprofit and Richard suggests that you get into that podcast space. Now, he's not saying you host it. We can work on that, and we can do all of that. But for everybody out there looking to just tap in with you, looking to even listen to the show, check out some of the episodes, or even be a part of it, what are some of the best places to reach you? Website, social media? Give us everything you got.
Yeah, the YouTube channel we're live there weekdays every morning at 10 a.m. It's Make Your Day Richer TV. Facebook, Make Your Day Richer. Website for all of the services, the coaching that I do, the production that I do. I have not had time. This is also awful. My show's not even on my website yet because I haven't had time. So that's also a key. Make sure you get all your crap together. But makeyourdayricher.com is where you can also find me.
Look, man, but that also just goes to show too that there's always room for improvement, even with somebody that, you know, you have such a beautiful background, you have such a professional presence, you have such a great energy about you. There are always things that we can work on, because, you know, when I click in on this stream, there are definitely some things that I need to do and I need to take care of from the podcast perspective. So I get that, but I love to play on words with the names and everything, and I'm definitely encouraging all of my audience to tap in. I'll be tapping in, like he said, weekdays in the mornings, you know, whether it be on your commute, whether it be at work, when you scroll through those emails, anything like that, just throw the show on. But Richard, I'm very grateful, one, that we were able to connect on behalf of even your client, but I'm even grateful that we were able to take it a step further and even bring you on here. And I'm obviously wishing you nothing but success. We're excited to see these seasons kind of keep rolling out and seeing the creative process behind anything. But more importantly, I'm excited to see everything come together. I'm excited to see that space come together. I'm excited to see all the creatives that you're going to be able to help manifest their journeys, their visions, and everything of the sort. And from down to business to make your day richer, we're definitely here to support all the way. So to everybody out there who continuously taps in, continuously shows love, whether you jumped on Facebook with us, you jumped on LinkedIn with us, Instagram, however you hear this episode in some capacity, I appreciate you. I love you. I thank you. This has been another episode of the Down to Business podcast here with Tamar Turner. Okay. And